And so the first principle that I want to give you guys is something called the Pareto Principle. So basically, Pareto Principle states that 80% of consequences come from 20% of causes. Okay. So in other words, the way that I translate this is you can get 80% of the mark or 80% of the juice or 80% of the academic results by only putting 20% of effort. Okay. And so this is a thesis that I'm going to use to get into a top 20 school. Okay. So it's impossible to apply the Pareto Principle to get into a top 5 school, right? Like, for example, like if you're Elon Musk and you want to achieve really, really good things, okay, you can't really apply the Pareto Principle. Like, you can a little bit, but you can't really apply the Pareto Principle if you want to get in the top 0.1%. Pareto Principle can only be applied if you want to get in, like, like you want to do okay, right? If you're trying to get into a top 10 school, you would obviously try to do all the questions in this database. But it's not necessary to do all 40 questions if you're just trying to get into a top 20 school or a top 30 school. Whereas if you really were trying to aim for, like, the 95%, the 99%, the really, really top end scores of getting in the top 10%, then yes, of course, you would need to do the whole paper, right? You would need to do the whole paper to get that, the last 20% of benefit. So, like, let's say, for example, you're 5 months out and your maths is already at 80%. Let's just assume that your maths right now is you're already scoring about 80% in maths. And so your maths is already pretty good. Then what you could do is you could probably completely skip the maths homework. You can completely skip all the maths questions because your maths is already good enough. So this is how you can really apply the Pareto Principle in extreme, because you know that you're only applying for a top 20 school. And so if you're already, like, in the next 15% for maths, right, or you're already scoring 80% in maths, then you just neglect that completely. Just make sure that you're maintaining that, and you just maintain that by just doing maybe like one paper a week, a couple of questions a week, but you completely skip the homework. And all you need to do is focus a lot on thinking skills. Maybe you're only scoring 40%, 50% in thinking skills, and to get into a top 20 school, you need to score like 70%. So you could just spend, half an hour every single day on just thinking skills to build that up. Like, when you're applying for these lower end schools, right? Like, I hate to use the word lower end schools, but you're applying for schools like Penrith, okay? When you're applying for schools like, let's say, Girraween, you can afford to not be the very, very best in a certain subject. You can afford to just kind of coast a little bit more and just bring up your biggest weaknesses.